BloombergQuint. Now, for over 2 weeks, farmers have been protesting on the outskirts of Delhi against 3 farm laws that were passed by the central government, that is the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Many of these farmers are predominantly from Punjab and Haryana, and hence the issue has now got severely politicized. Critics of the protesters say that these farmers and many of the middlemen or tradesmen that have accompanied them in the protests are arguing for very narrow interests that pertain only to their own livelihood, whereas these laws will bring benefit to farmers across the country. Where does the truth in all of this lie? I think for that, we need to leave the politics aside for a bit and just focus on the economic implications of these laws and what they mean, and then try and understand if there is any small group of farmers somewhere in the country that might not be at much of an advantage due to these laws and how their concerns might be met. So to understand what the economic implications of these laws are, what does it mean to have a free market for agricultural produce? Are there sufficient safeguards? Have the laws taken into account the various nuances of the agri-market? To understand all of that, I have with me today Sukhpal Singh. He is professor and former chairperson of the Center for Management in Agriculture at IIM Ahmedabad. Professor Singh has also taught at IRMA, which is the Institute of Rural Management, and he's also served in various academic and advisory capacities to state and central governments. Professor Singh, thank you very much for speaking to us here at BloombergQuint. So that one part of the debate here, which even the Minister for Agriculture today was addressing in his press conference, is that why should the center pass laws pertaining to a subject that is on the state list in the Constitution? So agriculture is on the state list in the Constitution, but the center argues that trade and commerce are in the central list, and therefore they are well within their right to pass laws that pertain to the trade and commerce of agricultural produce. Legal arguments aside, why do you think it's wrong, if at all, for the center to be able to visualize or envisage a national unified market for agri-produce and therefore pass laws of this nature, even if the core subject of agriculture is under the state's list?
Okay, I think agricultural markets, like agriculture per se as a sector, have been in the state list because there is plenty of diversity across states in India. Yeah, some states are one level of development of agriculture and its markets and market infrastructure. Others are much behind. So you really can't compare Odisha and Punjab or Tamil Nadu and maybe Bihar and so on. So those subjects were kept in the state list, thinking that the state governments need to take into account regional and local considerations to develop their agri sector and agri markets. So it's I will not go into the details of whether it is constitutional right to make a law or not to make a law, because center has article 33, entry 33 of the concurrent list, which can be used. But the point which is, I think, being made here is that the states are most sort of better placed to understand the requirements of the APMCs deal with the first level transaction between a farmer and first buyer. Right. That's what APMCs are supposed to control and regulate. When we say agricultural marketing, we just refer to that. When you say trade and commerce, it can be anything. So that is, I will not go into details of that because subject to interpretation. But that's what one would like to understand when say what is agriculture marketing and what is agriculture market produce committee, APMC, what is supposed to regulate? It is supposed to regulate first transaction between the farmer seller and the buyer to protect farmer interests. Therefore, there have been rules of the game in the APMC Act by which the transaction have to be conducted. The charges on the buyer are specified. The commission of the facilitator is specified. So all that is part of regulation.
Professor Singh, forgive me for interrupting you here, but you know, these are all things that have gone on for decades now. Yeah. What is the harm if a central government is envisaging a national market for agricultural produce and is saying, we don't want state boundaries to become boundaries that prohibit the movement of food grains or the movement of vegetables and fruits, or that create, silos. We want to be able to move towards a national market for all kinds of agricultural produce. And in fact, over the years, even the reforms that have been proposed or in some cases taken place with the APMC Acts have also suggested this, right, sir?
Yeah, I think more or less the reforms have been going on since 2003 with the first model APMC Act, which was also given by the central government as a model act to be adopted by state governments and amend their APMCs. So it's not that the center has not helped earlier the states to modernize or open up or reform. It was doing it, did it then in 2017 itself, 2-3 years back, saying now you need to reform your APMC once again by incorporating livestock produce also under agriculture markets. And from there, actually, the orientation a little bit changed. Earlier, it was regulation, APMC Regulation Act. Then it became promotion and facilitation of agriculture produce and livestock markets. And contract farming was taken out, saying that there is a conflict of interest that under the APMC Act, whether 2003 or 2017, the contracting agency or any direct buyer was supposed to seek permission from APMC, pay whatever charges, and then also pay mandi fees and other cesses, even if he or she procured directly from farmer or undertook contract farming with farmer to get that produced. So that was there. The channels were there, but contract farming was taken out of APMC domain, saying that since the regulatory body also deals with the produce because the stakeholders of APMC. Let me also inform you, by principle, APMCs are elected bodies.
Right. But so again, Professor Singh, again, before you get into the details of how APMCs function, and that is my next question, I want to be able to understand better the centrality of APMC so far over the decades in the trade of agricultural produce. But I still want to ask you, in your experience and assessment, do you think that it's viable? Why should our central government not envisage a national market for agricultural products?
No, nobody is
structurally, is that viable? Is my question to you.
That has been the agenda has been there since the first model act, that we need to integrate markets. We need to have more interaction, not only within this. Earlier, even within the state, APMCs were not integrated. You had to seek a separate license for each APMC. Then model act said that you can also have one single license for the entire set of APMCs in a state. So the move has been there. Even if the produce is coming from particular area and a particular mandi. So IIM was to achieve that integration, at least in price discovery, if not physically, in terms of movement of commodities.
Okay.
And somehow the things were then center thought recently that the progress and speed is perhaps not of the reforms is not as much as should have been. We have already lost a lot of time in opening up markets. Therefore, perhaps this step was taken that we should make a central law on this instead of waiting for each and every state to reform their.
So you fundamentally agree, and the argument you're giving me is that we've been attempting this for at least two decades now. The pace has been slow, though there have been changes. But maybe it is right on the part of the center to envisage a national.
States permit direct purchase. 20 have e-trading, 23 have single license or single point levy on the APMC purchases, 22 have contract farming permitted legally now, and 17 have what is called farmer consumer market yards. Like 70-80% of the reforms have been done by each state with some variation here and there, but it was definitely not 100% as expected. So therefore, this call was taken.
Okay, so maybe this is the center's way of saying we want to nudge towards 100%. So I'm putting that argument now aside. The legal issues are very different. I'm not getting into that. Whether the center can legislate, the states can legislate, the matter is, I think, has been moved to the Supreme Court, and that will decide. Let me come to the second issue here. One of the acts is critical to giving freedom of choice to farmers for the sale and purchase of farm produce, right? And they say that farmers can sell anywhere that they want, not necessarily only inside APMCs, as has been the case so far, but outside APMCs, at their farm gate, in a city, wherever they want, they are free to sell their produce. Now, To be able to understand the implications of that move, can you explain to us first the centrality of APMCs in the agri-produce market?
Okay.
And whether, therefore, a move of this nature is viable, sustainable, and will benefit farmers or not?
Yeah. So let me tell you that at least in terms of terminology or wording of things, farmer was always free to sell wherever he or she wanted. So farmers have been selling to local traders and not even making use of the APMC. APMC is only at district or block headquarters. But it was buyer who was constrained. Buyer had to take permission to buy from farmers, whether directly or through contract farming or outside the mandi. So it was buyer freedom, which was restricting the farmer freedom in that sense. So the three channels, I think it's very important to highlight that since 2003, the union government has asked states to make 3 more channels available beside the APMC. One of them is direct purchase from farmers inside the mandi earlier, now outside, now they're new trade areas. Second is contract farming, that sometimes you don't get the material for processing you need from the APMC markets. You need to go to farms to produce it. For example, organic production, you can't get it in the market. Third was private wholesale market, that in order to give competition to APMCs to perform efficiently and effectively, we should also have more mandis of that kind where farmers and traders meet, buy and sell. So that was another platform. So 3 things, 3 new channels were made available by law, which were not legal earlier, through the APMC route. And then IIM came within the APMC system, that we also need to discover prices more widely in a given mandi. Even if farmers are local, prices should be at least statewide or multi-statewide or national. So that has been going on. The role of APMC, see, depends on how you look at it. One role of APMC is that there are people who are able to directly access it. Some people say 6% farmers get benefit of MSP. Some say it's 10%. So it's not very high anyway. The second part about it is, even if you don't get MSP, when you sell an APMC mandi where MSP procurement takes place, it helps other farmers get little better price, right? So when government intervenes up to 20-30% of produce in a particular crop produce market, it helps other farmers also get it. So that is one role of APMC. The second is APMCs were giving price signals because they were the largest places where produce was being handled, bought and sold. So you will be surprised actually, even food supermarkets which buy directly from farmers, whether Reliance Fresh or Birla's More or whatever, even they discover their direct farmer purchase prices based on APMC price. Even today, many contracting companies still peg their contract price to APMC mandi price. So APMC mandi price is so important in this country because there's no other place where so much material was being handled, whether for government or for private trade. Even if it was like directly about 30% was coming through APMC system, other 60-70% or 50% was coming indirectly to the APMC or going out of the APMC after traders had taken charge of the produce, not necessarily farmer. So it varies. Let me also tell you that there is variation in the performance and efficiency and effectiveness of APMCs across states. For example, Punjab completely dependent on APMCs. Nothing is sold outside by and large. There are other states, where Bihar has no APMC for the last 14 years. So everything is already free for all, free for anybody to buy and sell from anywhere. So it depends where you talk of the role of APMC. But initial role of APMC was to help protect the farmer interest.
Right.
Farmer should not be taken for a ride by the buyer. Therefore, rules of game were specified. Permission was required to become, you had to give bank guarantees to have the counterparty risk coverage for the farmer. Yeah. Yes.
So before we get to counterparty risk, there's still a couple of basic questions I want to ask you. In your assessment, how much of the overall agri-produce trade today broadly takes place through APMCs? This includes everything, right? Rice and wheat, which is often APMC oriented, or fruits and vegetables. Much of the trade which happens outside APMCs as well. How much of the total trade of agri-produce, according to you today, happens through APMCs? Or the jurisdiction of APMCs, and how much happens outside?
No. Jurisdiction has been, I think, every growing area jurisdiction. Now it is reduced to APMC yard. So what by jurisdiction, what you mean is actually yard or sub-yard. So that is the domain of APMC now after the central acts. Earlier it was the entire area where the produce was being grown. That was called notified area. So anything being transacted there was under APMC regulation. APMC would intervene and say, why are you buying, why are you selling, and so on. Now it is restricted to only yards, where the physical place, where the actual transaction take place under the APMC yard or
Let me reword my question.
Yeah.
Let me reword my question then.
Yeah.
How much in your assessment was being traded or has been traded through APMCs?
So APMC channel, you can say anywhere between 30 to 50%, depending on how you look at it. Because fruits and vegetable markets are by and large now denotified.
Right.
We don't care. I told you number on 15 or 20 states. They don't care what happens. The mandis are there, but there's no regulation. So I would not really call them APMC mandis because they're almost like free market. Anybody can buy. Nobody monitors what you pay, what you charge, commission and charges, deductions, and so on. So if you take out that, then I would say in terms of volumes, it may be 25 to 30%. And in terms of value, it may be even lower because fruits and vegetables are high value crops. Others are low value crops.
Okay. So you're saying about 50% in volumes happens?
One third. Yeah.
1/3 happens through APMCs.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Now, one of the things that this act has introduced is that, if I understand correctly, whether you were buying inside an APMC or outside an APMC, but in the notified area. Yeah. So any trade or purchase of an agricultural produce required some sort of registration. Now the central law says that if you have a PAN card number, that's sufficient for you to be a trader or for you to purchase farm produce. Is that correct? Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah. That is the provision actually, and that is what is causing some concern among farmers. That how can you allow just anyone, you and me, who have PAN cards, to go and deal with farm produce? Because who will take the who will take care of the counterparty risk coverage for the farmer? Because earlier, when you have APMC licensed trader or commission agent, they are registered there. They're given licenses. They give some assurance guarantees. They give bank guarantees. If there is a compensation issue for the farmer, then the APMC used to intervene and get that compensation paid to the farmer. So now here somebody comes, say, I have a PAN card, I want to buy your 6 quintals or 10 quintals. So unless you have some way of registering them and regulating them, how do you protect the farmer interest? That is the concern, I think. It's too liberal a way of letting people deal with farmer produce.
On the flip side, sir, can't I argue that if the farmer sees that the person on the other side of the transaction doesn't have a track record, he might not agree to sell to that person at all?
No, so if he gets a few rupees more per kg or per quintal or whatever, he may be tempted to sell there because he doesn't have to go through the hassle of waiting for the auction to take place in APMC Mandi. He wants to get home within a few hours instead of overnight and so on. So there are many other compelling reasons the farmer may have to go to the new trade area rather than APMC. If he is not interlocked in the APMC with the commission agent or the trader in terms of credit and agri-produce or input and agri-produce linkage, which is why very big deal actually in Indian agriculture markets, that a lot of farmers are tied to these mandis because they borrow from there, from these informal, non-institutional sources of commission agents and traders, kacha artiya and pakka artiya. So unless that linkage is there, farmer may move out. Yeah.
So you're saying that the sort of the broad understanding that this creates a free market for farmers. Farmers can sell to anybody, and anybody can buy for farmers. And in effect, what that will do is create more buyers, create a more competitive market, and allow for farmers to price their products better, or at least for farmers to get a better portion of the ultimate selling price. That's not necessary,
No, given that is the intention, that is the objective. But I'm pointing out the downside that just doing that is not good enough. You also need to make sure that the farmer interest is protected, at least as much as it was in the APMC in terms of counterparty risk. That's the only thing I'm saying. I'm all for choice of channels for farmers. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. But the point is, I still feel in Indian agriculture market, we need to protect the farmer. He's a very small entity, 1 hectare, half an hectare, kind of, and a few bags of produce of whatever commodity. He doesn't even understand these things beyond there in the mandi. Artiya has been facilitating it. Of course, not in all states, but many states. In MP, they removed the Artiyas in 1980s itself from the mandi system. So farmers are directly selling to government and to private buyers. So there's so many models we have. So I'm only saying that when we are giving a new channel, for example, contract farming also, you have provided for registration and so on. So why not here also? So we need to have enough mechanisms in place to make sure new channels deliver the goods in terms of farmer benefits, whether price or ease of doing business or convenience or whatever.
Okay, can I just, for me to understand this better and for viewers to understand this better, can I use the illustration of a stock exchange saying that if I had 100 shares of a company to sell, and I was looking to sell them, firstly, I'm not going to find multiple sellers unless I have a way to advertise what I have to sell. So that's one. Because if the goal or the intent of this act is to create multiple buyers, that's not going to be possible unless I can actually advertise to a large number of people. So where do I advertise to a large number of people that I have 100 shares to sell? Plus, if somebody, sees my ad and says, hey, Menaka, I want to buy those 100 shares, I need to be able to know they can pay up. That is the function that a stock exchange does, in very simple terms.
Who will perform that role here?
Yes, that's the question I'm asking.
That's the point, yeah. There's no such agency as of now in the Act, at least not specified. They're saying the government may create a system where these guys may be asked to register, but it is not there as of now. So that's what is needed actually, that there should be somebody who takes care of what goes. See, not only from, how do you collect that information? How much has been traded, bought by whom, at what price? Now we have mandi information, which is available in public domain. How would you mobilize that information if you don't have any records of who buys how much?
But Professor Singh, you were saying that already so much of the trade happens outside mandis. What about the information of that trade? We don't have it even now, do we?
Yeah, no, we have because in some way the traders either end up the produce ends coming to mandi after local level transactions with the farmers and intermediate traders and so on, or many of them are registered in terms of traders and stockists and processors and so on. So, for example, somebody does contract farming, they have to report. At least technically, I know some states have very formal mechanism for this thing. How many farmers you're working with? How much acreage is under contract, how much produce is being bought from there, and some states they have to even pay the market fee on that produce as per the APMC Act. So we have some mechanisms of knowing. Of course, I would say many states are very lax on that. They are not monitoring even contracting agencies adequately in some states. So there are concerns. See, my concern is that let's have multiple channels, but have adequate and effective regulation. I don't want to be over-regulated, but effectively regulated so that we have a fair deal for the farmer as well as the buyer. Nobody should suffer any consequences of a market which is not adequately regulated. That's the only concern.
Fair enough. So we have imperfect information even now regarding the full trade of all agri-produce. That which gets done through mandis or APMCs is recorded, but that which gets done outside may or may not be recorded. We don't know. We are in an imperfect information situation, and you're saying with the deprioritization of APMCs or mandis, that imperfect situation will only worsen. It will not improve. Now, if we don't have better information, and if a lot of these trades, let's say, because it's the government's intent, happen outside of the APMC, what happens to the price setting ability for a farmer? What happens to the ability of a farmer to be able to get a competitive price? Are there ways right now in the agricultural market for the farmer to be able to access, let's say, prices being traded for that particular produce, across districts, across states? Is there any such available information?
Until now, we didn't have this new trade area. So only information a farmer used to seek was what is the price in mandi, APMC mandi, whether regulated or non-regulated. So based on that, he or she used to take a call whether to sell now or later or where and how. So they used to go to different mandi. Also, some other mandi, distant mandi has better price. They would go there rather than the local mandi. So that is, of course, the other part was not there. It was all going through the APMC, not independent. I mean, at least whatever is officially done under the APMC Act. So all that, there's only one sort of open market. In some states, you have now private wholesale markets. For example, Maharashtra, there are about 50 private wholesale markets. That is the only state which has been able to let this reform proceed in terms of setting up some alternatives to APMCs. Other states, they're not even a single private wholesale market. So that the mechanism, that is the least developed mechanism, that we had this option since 2003, but private wholesale markets have not come up. In fact, I argue in my research that if you are saying that there's a conflict of interest in terms of contract farming being permitted by APMC, there's a bigger conflict of interest between private wholesale market being permitted by the APMC, because that is next door. Yeah, that would immediately take away your volumes. So that should have been also taken out. Now it is, Central Act has done it. Now anybody can set up a private wholesale market.
Sir, do we have information of the price setting in private wholesale markets? For instance, you cited Maharashtra, and it has 50, you said 50 private wholesale markets, if I remember correctly. Do we have information of the kind of price setting in these private wholesale markets? Does this information get aggregated in some way? Because what I'm trying to understand is, if the intent of the law is to open up the market so that the farmer can sell to whoever he pleases or she pleases, that there are more buyers, therefore there is more competition, therefore there is better price setting. Will these changes get effected through this act or through this law if we don't have aggregated pricing, if we don't have counterparty risk? Will all of these things, these good intents, actually become reality?
No, that's the concern. No? That it's fine that we are giving more choice to farmer. Everybody should welcome that. I don't think anybody should have an objection to that. Point is, one, that will it really lead to better price discovery and price benefit for the farmer? I tell you the little story about the impact of this set of acts in the last couple of months. There's a latest report from Madhya Pradesh, which tells us about the impact of the enforcement of this act on the APMC markets. It is reported that 49 markets have not carried out any business. They have been shut since October. Yeah, zero business. And some 143 markets have reported a decline of 50 to 60% in their volumes. And the state mandi board revenues have fallen by something like 2/3 compared to same duration last year. So because the problem is unequal playing field between the APMC mandi and the new trade area or the private wholesale market in terms of buying costs. Even in Madhya Pradesh, even today you have to pay 0.5% market fee. It was 1.5 earlier. Plus you have commission agents. Madhya Pradesh doesn't have commission agents, but other states have 1%, 1.5% or 2%. Punjab has 2.5% commission. So it's buying costs which will make the APMC unequal in terms of able to or unable to attract volumes of produce. Because the other side you have zero buying cost. At least technically, you may still engage a commission agent or trader with some 0.5% commission, but officially you don't need to pay to anybody. No mandi fees, no market cess, no other charges. So that is also causing a concern that this infrastructure, which was very vibrant in some states, if these states are not able to lower the cost of buying by lowering the commission and all that, or commission agents commission or mandi fees or cesses, then naturally they will lose business. But this business will move over to the new trade area. So which may benefit farmer. I'm just giving you the farmer's argument. They say it may benefit the farmer because initially they will get some higher price. But after a while, when the mandi doesn't remain important in terms of price discovery, then the other mandi will start sort of behaving the same way as we have seen the lack of efficient price discovery in APMCs, despite having a large number of traders to bid on a farmer's produce and discover a price. That is the fear. Yeah.
Professor Singh, I don't understand this point. Sorry, please clarify for me again. If farmers can sell outside of the APMC yard in the new trade area, as you point out, without having to pay mandatorily any commission or levy by the state.
No.
All of those things. Isn't that a good thing? Will that not force APMCs to reduce their levies as well?
I think this took my point.
Okay.
Farmer doesn't have to pay any charges. I'm talking the buying charges for the buyer.
Okay, if the buyer, let's assume, because eventually those costs
doesn't pay any charges in most states.
Okay, sorry, let me rephrase that. If the buyer of agricultural produce does not have to pay anything in terms of commission or levy mandatorily in the new trade areas, but does have to pay whatever the mandatory levies are inside an APMC, then isn't it a good thing if more trade shifts outside of the APMCs, or at least the APMCs are nudged to stop being these silos of power, and they are forced to become more competitive in the kind of levies that they put in, and those levies then can be linked to the kind of infrastructure that APMCs provide, for instance, warehousing or any of that.
2 points to just examine that. One is that we are assuming that when somebody is incurring lower buying costs, he would pass on the benefit to farmer. That is an assumption. Yeah, not necessary. Second is, you look at the Bihar experience, no charges, no regulation, nothing for the last 14 years. Have farmers started realizing better prices there? 14 years of experience of no regulation of agriculture markets, no APMC, free for all. Have we gained anything there? But we learn from various reports. I've also visited there a couple of times at fruits and vegetable markets. The private traders have come up, they have set up makeshift kind of mandis on the roadsides. And for the first time, I saw that they were charging 2% commission to the farmer. Yeah, and most of the collection centers and APMCs are shut. Numbers have come down. Government purchase has also come down because there's no infrastructure now which is functional. So you have to look at this overall context. Simply because the new buyer comes with lower cost of buying does not mean that he or she would pass on that benefit to farmer.
Will they pass on the benefit to consumers? Because that's one other thing
that is also that is even more far-fetched, because that is after a layer of things, after processing, retailing, distributing, and you don't know how many hands it will pass through to really become available at a reasonable or cheaper price than the case. So farmer is immediate. This first party transaction, I'm saying, you have to pay there. But the consumer is maybe 3 steps, 5 steps away from that buyer, right? So I would not be able to say whether they will pass on. Yeah. I don't. Yeah.
You mentioned the Bihar example, and this has been cited by so many media people over the last several weeks that, oh, if Bihar could dismantle APMC laws all the way back in 2006, what's the big problem? Punjab and Haryana are only defending their turf, etc., etc. Any insight you can give us on how that dismantling of APMC laws has worked for Bihar? Has it improved the lot of farmers in Bihar in terms of either pricing power or, a wider set of buyers that they can sell to? Of course, a wider set of buyers should also improve pricing power, because that's what the end goal of all of this is, for the farmer to get a bigger share of what the ultimate selling price is, and therefore gain in prosperity, right?
Only thing I can say in terms of farmer benefit, farmers also mentioned during my visit, is that they say the markets have come closer to their producing areas now. So they don't have to travel that much to take their produce. Now they can bring it on bicycles and bikes and so on, motorbikes. So, but otherwise, the negative side, they are paying 2% commission, which generally in a regulated market, farmer is not charged the commission. The second part is that now, how do you discover the price? How do you say that my price by this private mandi is good enough? Because there is no APMC mandi which is regulated to compare with. There are no reference price now. There are small private markets on roadsides, and they do their own bit. Depending on how many people are bringing there, they just decide a price on a day, every day. So how does a farmer make out whether his price is good enough? You can, of course, compare with how much the other farmer got, but he doesn't have another market to benchmark against. Yeah, that is the concern. That there should be some public place which is regulated, which gives a signal to the other competing markets to create a kind of impact in terms of they behaving efficiently and not taking the seller for a ride. That is, I think, the concern. Yeah.
Okay, so you've explained what the concerns are, sir. Tell me what you think are the recommended fixes. We've discussed 2-3 things. If we want more buyers, but we can't allow only those with PAN numbers, that is not enough authorization, if I may say so. Then how do we fix that? We want more competitive prices for farmers, because that's the ultimate goal of having more buyers. Otherwise, what's the point of having more buyers? Yeah. How do we make sure that farmers have better access to better prices? That's second. Third, the ability for farmers to sell wherever, whoever they want to, without having to pay any levies or taxes. Because right now in the APMCs, there are a variety of levies and state taxes that also apply, which in these central laws, the law has made very clear that outside of the APMCs, no state levy, tax, cess can be applied to the sale of farm produce. So can you give me what you think the recommended broad solutions are to these challenges?
Okay, no, one is that PAN thing. I think we should be very clear that we should only encourage those serious players who want to deal with agriculture produce. So say that they should register if they are an agricultural trader entity, if they are a processor, exporter, and they want to operate outside the APMC in the new trade area. They should register. Their sort of transaction should be recorded, monitored, saying how much they have bought and at what price, so that we maintain the record. And we are also able to cover the farmer risk in terms of protection of his payments and other things, delays and all that. Yeah, which is there in the Act, but the agency to deal with it is not there right now. The central government, state, now they're saying that we will try to bring some such thing there. So that is, I think, needed. PAN card is definitely not enough. Yeah, it is not good enough a document to make somebody engage with farmers produce who has produced with hard labor over 6 months or 3 months, which is a livelihood, which is a lifeline. Yeah.
Yeah. So one quick question on that. If there needs to be registration, which I think there is some provision for it in one of the acts, and they said that the government may choose to register or ask for registration.
They're talking about e-registry. Yeah.
Yeah. Sir, if there needs to be registration, should there also be some sort of net worth criteria to help figure out the counterparty risk, or to weed out the non-serious players from the serious players?
Exactly.
Is that something that already exists in the APMCs and is maybe a practice that can be transported, or would that actually constrain the ability or the intent of these new central laws to increase the number of buyers?
So it's a trade-off you have to strike, keeping in mind that farmer interest is important, because after we are opening up markets for benefit of the farmer, right? We are saying farmer should have choice, he should have better price and whatnot. So if that is the major concern or major objective of these reforms, we should make sure that any buyer who comes does not take the farmer for a ride. So borrow something from APMCs in terms of licenses or bank guarantees or whatever. I'll have some more innovative mechanisms of protecting the farmer interest and identifying who the real genuine buyers are, not fly-by-night operators. So that is required. On the charges part, I think there has been, the government has been suggesting that if APMC still want to remain vibrant despite the new channels coming up, they should lower their market fees and cesses and commission. Some states are already doing it on the advice of the union government, but others will have to do. But the point is that some states think that the infrastructure they have created will not be sustained if they only charge, let's say, 0.5% or 1%, which is now being called that they should charge only service charges, not market fees, because some of the states have been using this market fee and fund for building agricultural marketing infrastructure, which is very substantial. Not only they have yards, they have drying machines, they have cleaning machines, they have graders and whatnot. So many of them have very high level of market infrastructure. So that they are saying may not be able to be sustained if they don't get enough revenues. So that is their concern, but that's only in a few states. Yeah, other states have been doing it. That's also the issue that these states have the charges because state has been buying from there almost every grain. The government has been buying almost all of their produce, and they have been sort of charging from the central government quite easily. Yeah.
So can I interrupt you there and your train of thought? Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's assume that the farmer is, finds a great buyer with good credentials in the, in the new private or the new trade areas, right, outside of the APMC. Then this kind of infrastructure that you're referring to, whether it is warehousing or it is drying or things like that, that will be supplied either by the buyer or it will be supplied by third-party vendors who will set up large warehousing facilities and things like that. That is the intent of these new laws?
That is the expectation, that it will be created once you permit them to undertake their own transactions, whether private wholesale markets coming up to do this job, or some of the existing warehouses and cold stores and other infrastructure being put to this use now. During the season or whatever, and some buyers creating their own collection center, let's say. They can set up a collection center where farmers can come, and all the supermarkets are doing that. They have set up collection centers in local areas, in vegetable growing pockets, where farmers bring their produce, they grade it and take whatever is good quality and pay the farmer and get going. So that kind of infrastructure will happen more now because you have freedom to now set. Earlier they had to take permission even for that. If they wanted to buy vegetables, they had to ask for a collection center permission from the IPMC and maybe pay charges if applicable. Now all that be gone, so they'll be much more free to set up this if they are interested in that. But in Bihar, we have not seen that coming up, unfortunately.
Why is that, sir? Because I mean, that was my next question. That isn't it a good thing if there is private sector participation allowed in being able to set up these alternate facilities for warehousing, for quality control, for all of that, then farmers will have choices. They will have a choice to either go to the APMC and pay whatever the cess or levy there is, or they will have a choice in the private, market and pay whatever the fees are for these third-party services. And those choices are good to have because then there will be price competitiveness in supplying these services, all of that. Do you see it play out that way? Why did it not play out like that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Let me tell. I've written about it also, saying, see, some of the things you are expecting from deregulation is the job of policy. Like I say, the investments happen because of incentives, not because of just deregulation. It's one step, one important component, but people don't invest simply because you allow them to invest. There should be conducive conditions supporting infrastructure, supporting investments by other agencies, public or whatever, and local market in that area to support that kind of investment. So investments don't happen only because of deregulation. That's my understanding of things. You need much more of policy thrust also alongside that to encourage that.
But deregulation is the first step, right?
That's what our experience shows. We have not seen any great investments.
Sorry for the interruption, but deregulation is the first step, isn't it, sir?
I think it should be, if you're, one of the objectives of reforms is getting more private investment in agricultural markets.
Right.
So then should also back it up with policy at the same time. You can't do it phase by phase. Now, today, after 10 years, think of policy. No, that can't be that way now. So it has to be in one go. If you want to do that, then do it together. If that is the intended purpose of all this, yeah.
Okay, so I have a question on, you raised the issues about farmers and the counterparty of the buyer, counterparty risk of the buyer, and making sure that the farmer is not conned by some fly-by-night operator. And that brings me to one critical aspect under these laws, both the contract farming law as well as the other law which allows for farmers to sell to whoever they want to, the trade law and the price and services law, if I can call them that in short, is the dispute resolution. Now, what this does, and this is akin, as you have pointed out to me in previous conversations, this is akin to the Model APMC Acts. The dispute resolution is executive driven. They've said that any dispute between the transacting parties will be taken to the subdivisional magistrate, then eventually to the collector on an appellate level, and then, I think higher up. But at every level, the decision maker or the arbitrator is the executive.
It ends at the collector level, no higher up.
No, sir. In one law, you can go all the way up to joint secretary, sir.
That's okay. That is.
Yeah. So the point being that the dispute resolution is entirely executive-led in terms of who the arbitrator is, and not judiciary left. Yeah. And in fact, in both these laws, there are specific provisions which clearly say no civil court jurisdiction will apply. Now, this is not new. You're telling me that the earlier Model APMC Acts also had this.
Yeah, definitely. So because the thinking in the government or policy circles has been that let's not put farmer into very troublesome and lengthy judicial process for small transaction issues. They may have a few thousand rupees trouble with the contracting company or with the trader and so on. So first reforms itself in the APMC Act provided for APMC as the dispute resolution authority. Because farmer knows the APMC, he goes there to sell, he knows the members, he knows sometimes the secretary and the chairperson also. So that was found as a reasonable and local relevant kind of dispute resolution platform for farmer. Now when you're moving it to, see the problem now is once you have declared a new trade area which is not in the domain of APMC, you can't use that mechanism. So you have to find alternative, which is now administrative structure. So some farmers and their representatives feel that that is even more complicated and it will not be in the interest of farmer because you don't have farmer representative there. APMC committee has 50 to 60% members of the committee who are farmers. And when election take place, you have representative farmers, commission agents, traders, government, and cooperative. So that is a kind of multi-stakeholder body, you can say, elected body. So they say that their farmer interests could have been better protected in the earlier system. Here you have administrative structure, which may not be able to give the farmer a kind of fair resolution of disputes. That's their worry. So now government is thinking, they're saying now, okay, until we have more regular kind of mechanism, the copy of the contract can be kept with the offered this before. Copy of the contract can be kept with the SDM. Yeah, as a registration kind of formality. But that is an issue that you really can't do anything about it in terms of because you have moved out of APMC. So that can't be. And what else you have available as a local dispute resolution platform which can be used? So government went through this administrative structure, which is SDM and collector. Yeah.
Okay. So I think you explained to us that while the intent is good, in many of these provisions, several safeguards are missing, which the central government should consider including one way or the other, whether it is the registration of serious buyers or registration to ensure credentialed buyers. It is a way of making sure that counterparty risk is taken care of. Uh, Aggregation of price information across markets, APMCs, private yards, contract farming, so that farmers at the end of the day are able to more competitively price their produce, which is the real end game of all of this effort, right? If they don't have the information, in fact, they're at more of a disadvantage because as the trade gets dispersed, they have no way of collecting that information. So the central government or the states should ideally be responsible for collecting that information. And in fact, why should it only be states? There should be a national aggregated price information process, which I think INAM provides to some extent, sir, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that was again up to the state level. It was not across the nation. It was located in different states. They were connecting the APMC mandis to the INAM platform, which was still for each state.
Okay.
Yeah, so they had linked up some 585 markets out of 7,000 market yards and sub yards, which is about 10-15% of the total. So they are the traders registered anywhere could bid. They had to register with INAM and they could bid there on farmer produce, but mostly farmer produce was from the local area or from within the state, because it was being supported through importantly through the APMC structure. Each INAM was located in an APMC yard, and government was giving some 70 lakh rupees to each APMC to set up the digital infrastructure to set up INAM platform. So I don't know what will happen to that now, because now you moved away from the APMCs. Would you still keep supporting it? I'm not sure.
Okay, so that's interesting. So better price aggregation and information and access to information on pricing for farmers. Some fixes to the dispute resolution mechanism, because otherwise it's too executive.
Yeah, so there are a couple of other things I would like to point out. I think in the design of, for example, Contract Farming Act, there are, of course, a lot of anomalies in terms of how it defines a farmer, and you even ask whether sponsor is the right term to use. It is no problem, because when somebody is doing contract farming, he can't be a just trader. See, trader means you just buy from somebody. Contract farming by concept or by definition means somebody is producing for you and you are asking him or her to produce. So sponsor is the right definition, concept used or term used, or contract farming agency, you can say. I use that term generally, but that includes public, private, margin, everybody can be good. So sponsor is okay, sponsor of contract production. Who's saying, grow for me, I will buy by this quality, this price agreement, and so on. So there, for example, they say that you will agree on a minimum price to begin with, but if you want to pay bonus or premium, it should be linked to APMC or e-trading price. I think that I've done a lot of work on contract. I don't think we should tie any channel price to any other channel price. That is not good. That is not good. That's not a good sign to the potential contracting agencies. Because they should be, farmer and company should be able to decide their own price mutually based on economics of crop or whatever somebody can offer and so on. Why should say, if you're paying more than the minimum price, you should benchmark it against AP. We have been saying APMCs are not efficient at discovering prices. Now you go back and use that price to pay the premium or bonus to the farmer. So I thought that was problematic. Other problem which is there in that act is even sharecropper is being involved in contract farming. I think that is not I have never heard this, that sharecropper can be part of contract arrangement. And they made him, the guidelines say if sharecropper is part of contract, he has to take responsibility to receive inputs and make use of those inputs adequately or efficiently. So I think some of these things are not really very good parts of contract arrangement, and many things which should have been there have been left out. For example, contract cancellation clause. What happens if company cancels the contract or farmer cancels the contract? What are the penalties? Not talked about. If there are delayed deliveries at the factory gate, I take a truck of tomatoes and it's waiting at the factory gate for 6 hours or 10 hours and quality loss happens. Who will compensate that? So some of those things are which should have been there in modern contracting arrangements are missing.
If I understand correctly, sir, the penalties under the two acts range from somewhere at 25,000, which is the lowest, to 10 lakhs, which is the highest. And when you link that to the dispute resolution mechanism in both acts, which is the act that allows farmers to sell to whoever they want to, as well as the act that lays down the framework for contract farming, these seem like not very robust dispute resolution mechanism, and definitely not very robust penalties if the end goal is to protect farmers.
Yeah, so as long as the penalties are substantial, that is fine. But the issue is whether the system of the dispute resolution would be able to help the farmer, because it's somewhat complicated as farmers perceive it. That's what we talked about, saying as going to SDM, setting up a conciliatory board, and then 30 days waiting, and then going to district collector, and then so all that is a bit of too formal an arrangement. And compared to APMC, I'm only comparing the APMC because that's what we have seen in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have any other benchmark to go by. Yeah.
Yeah. Sir, two last quick questions. I've already consumed a lot of your time, so let me ask you two quick questions. One is this issue of these protests. And I think so much has been said about it that I don't want to spend too much time. I just want your view. The fact is that Punjab and Haryana, like you pointed out, are very APMC dependent. The fact is that the bulk of the MSP related purchases that happen in rice and wheat happen in these states. The fears for the farmers range from the deprioritization of the APMC to potentially the government doing away with MSP, though the government has been assuring them that MSP is not going to go away. What is your broad assessment of these protests, your reaction to them, and what can be done to help these farmers concerned?
No, technically, these two are separate issues. MSP,
right,
which is a government policy or administrative decision, it's not a part of any law. Yeah, it's not part of any act. Whereas on the other side, we're talking about two legal acts. So there is a concern that if there is an unequal, I'm just giving you what people in Punjab and Delhi are saying, that if the buying costs in APMC mandi where the purchase by the FCI takes place now are higher, even not only private buyers, even FCI may move out of the APMC mandi to buy from new trade area. Let me tell you, in Punjab, for the first time, CCI has bought cotton this season without paying commission to the Aditya. They bought directly from farmers. I'm very happy about it, but that was a long pending thing. FCI and CCI were trying to pay directly. The state government was not allowing. So this time they'll be able to bypass the Aditya, and they bought directly from farmers in the APMC mandis. First time. Yeah. So the concern is that if government also moves out of APMCs, farmer may still get APMC outside MSP, even outside the mandi, but other stakeholders may suffer because they will be out of the game. So that is the concern, because a lot of these interests are also intertwined. Yeah. In terms of some people not just being farmers but also being commission agents and traders in those mandis. So that is the worry, I think, saying, and then one feels that this mandi, you had a very formal kind of arrangements. When you buy outside, you don't know whether you buy all of that or only some time and so on. So that is the linkage with MSP is more because of the implications, or sort of the likely implications of how this will play out in terms of impact on the APMC markets. It arises out of that. And of course, there are other things. For example, today I was looking at some data. The FCI is incurring very high costs. For example, 31% of the total buying cost is just commission and mandi charges. Yeah, almost 1/3 of the total buying charges are these two charges. So why would FCI also like to keep paying this if they can get at half of this cost outside? So that is the concern, that over time everybody may move to a lower buying cost area if the buying costs don't come down in formal mandis, APMC mandis. That is what.
Are there any measures that you think that can be taken by the government in the context of these three new laws that might put to rest some of the concerns of these farmers from Punjab and Haryana? Though I think the argument that why should FCI pay more? Why shouldn't the costs of the middlemen costs be removed? Those are all justifiable arguments, isn't it, economic point of view?
Yeah, anybody would like to reduce their cost of buying or procuring. So I think that signals were being sent for a long time. Some states listened to that, others didn't listen. I think now government is again sort of trying to work with the farmers, saying, or the states which are upset about, saying we would give you a promise that will continue. But I think it's important to lower, if not completely abolish. Now the deal being done is that, or being proposed is that, okay, you reduce some, we will impose some, or we let you impose some charges in the new trade area. See, the issue is like this. Now you have a new trade area which is not under APMC, but now you're saying state can still impose levies on those. So I don't know, it's a bit complicated to understand this. How can now state have a domain to impose levies on an area of market which is not under their domain or under their jurisdiction? So I don't know how it will be worked out if at all this happens, that states will be allowed to charge some levies on the new trade area transactions as they do in APMCs, even if at a lower rate. How would you manage that? You are again now bringing back the APMC jurisdiction back to this new trade area. And if you carry out some of these suggested changes in the acts, you are almost back to the APMC kind of situation in some way. Yeah, because you'll have levies, then you'll have registration, you'll have everything, which APMCs were doing under the Model APMC Act by giving permissions, exempting from market fees in some cases, or charging half of the fees in some cases, and so on. Yeah. So let me also tell you, it's not that these channels were not operating. Contract farming has been going on in every state. Direct purchase has been going on for the last 15 years in most states. So it's all there. I think the only hitch was this, that how do we move it out of the mandi control, which was regulating, permitting, charging, cess, and so on and so forth.
Right.
That has driven all this. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's a whole different debate. The ability of states to earn some income from levying, cesses or taxes on some elements of this trade, especially after the introduction of GST, and what that means for the federal structure of India. But I'll leave that for another time in another debate. You have very painstakingly explained to us the economic implications of these two laws. I want you to summarize for me then, sir, in one answer, whether you think that these three laws, because there's also fear, we didn't talk about the Essential Commodities Act, but there is some fear that because it takes away the restrictions on storage, etc., that there might be hoarding by private sector players, which now can enter the market and, in a bigger way, if I can put it that way, in a bigger way to produce or to purchase agricultural produce. And that might lead to ill effects on the kind of pricing that farmers are able to get. So if you were to summarize the key economic outcome of these three laws, does it improve, broadly speaking, the lot of farmers in India?
Actually, let's recognize this fact that ECA is not a new law. It is just amended. It is central law, has been there since 1955. I think a lot of the policymakers and others were concerned that there is ad hocism in imposing these stock limits. Every now and then, government just comes in whenever there is a concern that prices are rising to this commodity, that commodity. They said, if you want agri-businesses to have a stable kind of understanding of the policy, more regular kind of approach to policy, then we should also give that signal saying we will not interfere just in an ad hoc fashion. So now they said that generally we will not. So it's not complete exemption. They say if the prices of cereals, non-perishables, go up to 50% of the previous 5 years of annual average, 12 months, and the perishables beyond 100% or double, then only these stock limits can be imposed on this. Yeah, so it's not completely freed. It's relaxed a little bit. So that is the government still has the power, and they have kept other clauses, war, famine, this, that, and so they can still clamp down on any stock limits. So that is an issue which is for everybody in this country, if you're talking about the implication of that for inflation and consumers and so on. So that is a much larger issue in my understanding to talk about that. Why everybody suffers from that, not just farmers, right? But that is a post farmers sell their produce, then it comes in terms of stocking, warehousing, and hoarding or whatever. So that has implications for consumers. But let's see how it plays out, because earlier we were saying we are very ad hoc, we are too strict. Now we're saying we are too liberal. So I think we are not thrown the entire thing out. We still have that government has kept the option of imposing when limits are crossed, and also for other reasons other than price rise. So let's see how it goes. Yeah, you are muted.
Your overall take on these farm laws and whether they will improve the lot of farmers, very quickly, sir.
See, as I said, I always work when I look at agriculture, I look at the concerns of small and marginal farmers. My research shows that most of the time they have been excluded from modern channels like contract farming. So no company wants to work with very small and marginal farmer. They say you should have 5 acres, you should have 3 acres, you should have irrigated, you should have this investment sort of potential or capacity and so on. So and even supermarkets also, they relatively work with relatively better producers. So unless we have that's why I'm very particular about regulation and policy role in this. Opening up markets fine, but unless we have systems in place in terms of regulation and policy to make sure that these new channels are inclusive, we may not be able to reach those farmers and benefit them if we just leave it like that. So we need to have mechanisms. I've been arguing about group contract farming. Can be promoted by policy, saying we will encourage group contracts so that farmers have larger volumes and buying or sponsoring company has lower transaction costs of working with a group rather than 1,000 farmers. And farmers can also acquire some bargaining power when they have larger volumes. So we need to have that kind of incentivized system through policy. Regulation alone will not be able to go beyond a point. Regulation has role in terms of protecting the interest of the weaker party. But if you want them to be part of this, then you have to also have a policy which is enabling for small and marginal producers to become part of modern market arrangements, which are anyway welcome, because more channels we have, farmers should have choice, and let's hope that choice can also be realized into better returns for farmers. Yeah.
Professor Singh, thank you so much. This has been an incredible learning experience. I think we all speak about the agriculture trade without understanding all the nuances, and you've helped us understand that today. And we've done that without the politics, which I think is a huge accomplishment. Thanks very much for shedding light on this.
Thank you very much. Enjoy talking to you.
Deeply appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.